It is our pleasure to host you again. Back when you were campaigning for the first term, you did an Eggs and Issues with us.
Is this water, by the way?
It is water.
I'm a Murphy after all.
Okay. So let me set the table for the governor and for everybody here today. Governor, in the room today, we focused today on small and mid-sized companies, making a big deal out of small business. It's been a chamber initiative over the last couple of years. We want to take it forward. In the room today, we have a whole host of small business owners. We also have business students from 4 member colleges in the room, along with a host of other members and so forth. So you have a welcoming crowd, and we have a strong audience that's supportive and interested in our conversation today.
Great.
So before I jump into some questions, just give you the opportunity to say welcome and hello.
Great to be here. Great to be back. I remember, Jim, you and I and Simon Sini, I'm not sure Ron is here,
Yes,
in the back, and a few others gathered in a conference room well before that Eggs and Issues, when it was cold, dark, and lonely for me, and you guys were always very willing and open to not just meet, but to exchange ideas. And so I want to thank you for that. This is a relationship that goes back, I think that was 2014 maybe.
Yep.
So 9 years. I want to acknowledge Senator Bergen County's own and Mayor Paul Sarlo. Paul, great to be with you. And Paul is not just a great leader, but he's also been a big supporter of the chamber, and
yes.
You know that better than I do.
It's our champion.
Amen. My chairman, Paul Giuliano, who I will both begin and end the day with today. So, Paul, great to see you. And Tim, I want to give you a shout out. We just got back from Asia, which I hope we can talk about for a minute or two, where I think we had a really successful, action-packed visit. I would say I enter a discussion like this very proud of what we've done for small businesses, but recognizing there's much more distance yet to travel. We're in year 6 of an 8-year journey, and I think if you compare where we are today versus where things were when we got here, it's a record that we feel very good about, but we also acknowledge is incomplete. And the other sort of big theme that I would leave or throw out there is I think right now our state, our country, and our world are a little bit of at an inflection point, and maybe a little bit of a tale of two realities. One set of realities is pretty uncomfortable. High interest rates. It feels like inflation has gotten better. I'm not sure the consumer, the man on the street, sees it that way, to be honest with you. Interest rates are still very high. They're sort of 15-year high on mortgages, and anybody who's out there borrowing for anything knows that all too well. And you've got enormous geopolitical unrest right now, almost unprecedented for decades. And that is a reality that I fear will get worse before it gets better. So that's the bad news. On the other side of the table, you saw the third quarter GDP numbers for the country. I don't know that we have ours yet, do we? But they're really strong. We look at our revenues almost daily as a state. They continue to be holding up relative to plan. Unemployment remains in a very good historical place. So this is I come to you this morning torn. I'm leaning, if we were together 6 or 8 weeks ago, I was saying, and I would have said, I think the soft landing scenario is being given too much weight, and the bumpier landing is being given too little weight. I no longer feel that. I feel like markets have begun to adjust in a fairly sober way. NASDAQ had its 2 worst back-to-back days of the year, yesterday and the day before. So I think capital markets are beginning to reflect a reality. The real economy, the underlying real economy, continues to be strong. So I'm no longer of the opinion that the glass half empty reality is being underweighted. I think that's being probably properly weighted right now. And let's just hope for the best as we try to get our way through this. Last thing I want to say, Jim, is I view our job, I know Tim does, Jose Lozano is here, who ran Choose New Jersey so well. I know he feels this way. Yeah, I'm a recovering banker, and you'll learn early on that you've got systematic risk and unsystematic risk, meaning there's stuff that's market related. I can't control a war in Europe or a war in the Middle East. I don't run the Federal Reserve. So there's stuff that we can talk about. We can, hopefully, I'm a former diplomat, try to influence, as I have been and was just on the phone trying to do that just now. But that's really beyond our control. The unsystematic risk is the stuff that is that you can control. And that's where we're obsessed. We focus on that every minute of every day. What can we control? And one of the things we look at, we sort of look at two dimensions. Where are we today versus where were we when we inherited the car keys 6 years ago? And the other dimension is where are we today as compared to other American states, particularly ones that we realistically compete with for businesses and families. And so that's where the overwhelming amount of our time is spent.
That's great. Governor, very early on after you were elected, I am happy to say that one of the first things you did was convene business leaders. And Tom Bracken and Mike Eganton from the State Chamber are in the audience.
Hello, Tom.
And
Mike. Hello, Mike. Nice to see you.
And one of the things that was so energetic for me and promising for me was that you started to listen right away. We sat down with Tim and his team, and you were eager to understand what was going to be necessary to advance economic development programs. And so Tim has very ably led NJEDA in a way. How important is that to you, and what did it mean to you? Did we fulfill the promise of where we're going with economic development-based kinds of programs?
I wouldn't say we've fulfilled it. I'd go back to my opening remarks that I'm proud of the journey that we have followed, and I'm proud of the fact that we've kept lines of communication open at every step of the way, even when we didn't always agree. But I don't think that we've fulfilled ultimately the entirety of the objectives. And somebody asked me on our trip to Asia, or didn't ask me, raised the obvious point that, frankly, some of the seeds we're planting, particularly now in year 6, may not come to fruition until long after we've hung up our cleats. But I think we've been who we said we were going to be. We said we had to grow the economy, we had to shrink inequities, and we had to get New Jersey once again to be a state that folks looked up to, felt was trustworthy and responsible. And I think we've made a lot of progress on all three.
I do as well.
With the input, I have to say, of guys like you and organizations like this.
Thank you, Governor. You campaigned early on, and even in your second term, on building a fairer and stronger economy. And one of the things that I had so much respect for in you is early on in that campaign, you and I had a private conversation at an event. I think it may have even been the Chamber Walk at the time. And I asked you about the transition from a fairer economy focus to a stronger economy focus. And you said something that was very compelling to me. And that was, for the longest time, we have worked on the stronger side of the economy, and it never really became fair. And so just please comment a little bit about how we've made some real progress on the fairer side, which has really led into a stronger side of the economy. Yeah,
that's a good theme to raise, because probably I'm as guilty as anybody. You get the impression that these are independent pursuits, that you either are going to grow the economy, create more jobs, stronger, jump higher, run faster, or you're going to address inequities. And the fact of the matter is they feed on each other. In the very simplest terms, the better you do over here, the more revenues you collect to drive into programs that directly address inequities. And likewise, if you address inequities over here, you're bringing folks more opportunity, you're giving them a better shot at getting comfortably in the middle class, and therefore contributing much more mightily to the economy, which in a virtuous circle comes back and helps you grow the place. So when you, and by the way, remember the debate we had, it feels quaint right now, and I'm not suggesting that this is not an issue for particularly ours, that wages aren't an issue particularly for small businesses, but do you remember how long it took us to get to a glide path to $15 an hour minimum wage, which we'll get to on January 1st. It'll be slightly over 15 because of an indexing that we put into it. And I remember having a conversation, it might have been with you, Jim, in the depth of the pandemic. You couldn't get anybody to do anything for $15. So the debate of 5 years ago now seems, the word I used, almost quaint. But the fact of the matter is we got that done. We got paid sick leave done. So payment, benefits, we are a much, much fairer state than we were. We still have big gaps, especially along racial lines, and not just in wages and benefits, on things like my wife has been a champion on infant and maternal mortality, has huge gaps across white, non-white communities. Criminal justice reform is a work in progress. Affordable and accessible housing and health care continues to be a work in progress. But again, we've made a lot of, we've come a long way in all of those. And when you do that, you contribute directly to a stronger economy. And as I say, if you've got a stronger economy, you have far more degrees of freedom to address your inequities.
Agreed. So we see, Governor, all of this dysfunction with this bipartisan bickering on a national level. Share with us what the state of bipartisanship is here in New Jersey, and perhaps some of the programs that may have been advanced in a bipartisan way.
It's an interesting question to ask 11 days before an election.
I know.
So you probably, my answer is going to may ring a little hollow in the context of the rhetoric we're seeing out there right now. So please accept that's the health warning on the side of the cigarette package. I think it's, first of all, it's light years different and better than it is in Washington. Although I give President Biden a huge shout out. This guy said he would reach across the aisle, and he has done so. Whether you agree with him on everything or not, he's the first guy to call now Speaker Johnson, who, by the way, I think I can't say this literally for the president, but I bet you it's true that none of us, including the president, could have picked out of a lineup 4 days ago. But he's the speaker, and God bless him, and we wish him well. But we're in a very different place here. My closest, Paul is one of my closest friends in Paul and Paul both, but Paul Sarlo in the legislature. But right up there would be John Bramnick, who is one of the senior Republican leaders. In fact, we just successfully nominated and the Senate approved Mike Noriega to our Supreme Court. And John Bramnick is the one who gave me that name. He was one of John's partners. I think of the Boardwalk Fund has been a bipartisan, Tim, Paul, endeavor. A lot of the small business. We made, I think, this year or last year, 7 times the amount of grants, loans, programs for small businesses than we did the year before we got here. I think we did 3,200-ish individual actions during and that was overwhelmingly a bipartisan endeavor. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we're only behind California and New York in monies directed to small businesses. So I think, listen, do we disagree? You betcha. But even when we do, there are very few Republicans in this state who are in the legislature with whom I don't have their cell and have some amount of private exchange that's overwhelmingly, if not entirely, civil. So all of us say things in public, which is the nature of the business. But I think it's a state filled with folks of goodwill who are overwhelmingly elected to do the right thing. That doesn't mean that I don't think there isn't a stark choice in 11 days, because I believe there is, but you'd expect me to say that.
I think, well, we're happy to hear that. I specifically asked that question because, as I talk to members and when we stray into the politics conversation, I can tell you that, and I'm going to ask by the level of your round of applause, if the audience agrees that we as American people, both here in New Jersey and nationally, want to see more civil bipartisan action. Yes? And so recognizing we are in election time, and I appreciate your comments about that, I think the general public that sits a few degrees left of center and a few degrees right of center, that entirely wants to see more of some real civil legislative progress and working, and so we appreciate your efforts to do that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about innovation for a few minutes, and one of the things that I was an immediate fan of early on in your administration was the creation of the Office of Innovation. And me and my team have worked with that office a couple times. We believe that the improvement of technology and the way government uses technology is to be would be really helpful for the perception of how both residents and businesses work with government. And so just talk a little bit about how far the Office of Innovation has come and some of the things that perhaps they're working on to improve that relationship and perception.
Yeah, I always get the website. Is it business.nj.gov? Business.nj.gov is one of their biggest accomplishments, in my opinion, which is a soup to nuts. I heard this in the private sector. Don't make the customer have to pick which door to go in. Give them one door to go in, and then hold their hand when they get inside that door and lead them into the department that they need to be with. And this website is exactly that. It's one portal. It's one entryway. If you want to start a business, expand a business, know what services we've got available, programs that Tim might have available for you, it is a great one-stop shop, business.nj.gov. Strongly recommend that. Tim was referring to generative AI when you and I walked in. I'd say that's an area right now that we are spending an enormous amount of energy and focus, including in the Office of Innovation. We sort of approach it with a three-legged stool. One is as a business attraction opportunity, and we believe the Bay Area is ground zero for the AI industry right now and the AI talent. We are aggressively pursuing a whole series of options and plans for New Jersey to be sort of second fiddle, East Coast hub. So one leg of the stool is business attraction. Second leg of the stool is to get this thing regulated properly. That, this is something that you see an enormous amount of debate around. Will it be, will this be the best thing that ever happened to us, or will this be a job killer that ends human life on the planet? And so having a stake in that debate is important. So having the second leg is regulation. And the third, which is really where the Office of Innovation is spending a lot of their time, is using AI to better deliver government services for our customers, for the residents of this state. And there's an enormous potential there. You just think about experiences that we all have. Motor vehicles would be one example. The historic Anchor property tax relief program. I did ask the governor on television last night. It's gotten better, but a woman called up and said the phones never get picked up. And it's gotten better. I send them to the website. By the way, anchor.nj.gov is the website. It's much easier to penetrate the system through the website. But if you just imagine if you had frequently asked questions generated by artificial intelligence with an ability to seamlessly communicate with our residents, it's a game changer. So those are the three legs of the stool. That to me is a good sense of what that office is up to. It's not just that office, it's Tim and myself and others. As I think you mentioned, there's a task force that we just put out there. We want to be at the front end of where that's headed. And last comment, big mistake if you're not really deeply read into artificial intelligence. Bless you. We miss nothing up here, I want you to know. Particularly when people throw things at us. Big mistake to view AI as a discrete line of business, if you will. I was on one of the biggest companies in the state is handing over chief executive from one generation to the next, on with them yesterday, talking about how it's infiltrated their entire business. This is a pervasive technology. It's a pervasive opportunity, probably a pervasive risk as well. And so getting that right as it seeps itself into every walk of our life is a high imperative for us and the Office of Innovation.
Just to close the comment on the innovation, I will tell you that when we had those early discussions with the Office of Innovation and Tim's team and folks in your office very early on, your hopes were to absolutely change the perception and the ease of which businesses and residents can communicate and effectually do business with New Jersey state government. It has worked. It has worked. The perception of that has changed, and I would just simply say, and I know my dear friend Tom Bracken would agree, to continue that focus. Don't rest on our laurels. The technology of how to make New Jersey more efficient in having business and its residents conduct business with government is really critical.
So I would just say two things. One is CNBC ranked us as the most improved state in America in terms of the business environment and the ability to do business, which we're proud of. Part B of that is we're not going to give up. And the second point is we reached into the bullpen and took out the immortal Chuck Richmond and named Chuck as our permitting czar. And Chuck has proven over decades of public service, both sides of the aisle, I might add, that he can get stuff done, and he's making a lot of progress there. But it's like everything else we talked about earlier. Very proud of the progress, not satisfied. Yep.
And I can't agree more. Chuck has been amazing. He's a terrific listener. He knows that regulatory world well and the permitting world. So we love working with him, and he's been terrific. So that was kudos. So look into a little crystal ball.
Yes.
And you know the folks that are here are very passionate about this particular region, and you know that's what I do each and every day in the Meadowlands. So kind of look into the crystal ball and kind of paint the picture of what you see for the Meadowlands in the upcoming years in the future just as a region.
I'll start on Sunday, 2 days. I'll be at Jets against Giants. Hopefully a full house. If it isn't a full house on Sunday, when is it going to be a full house? For you Giants fans, I would argue it's a do or die game, and it's an important one for the Jets. But I think those are different levels of pressure. There's a lot going on. You all know the here and now better than I do, but there's enormous potential, and there's stuff that's on the books. I'm not making news this morning, but we're going to have an announcement next week on something very cool related to the Meadowlands, so stay tuned. I checked in again this morning. I'm not allowed to say what that is. I feel badly about that, but I'm not. I'm beholden to other authorities. We are spending an enormous amount of time on the World Cup, the Men's World Cup, which is in 2026. I'd say no matter what, we'll have plus or minus 8 games. My guess is anything plus. It's a bigger field. They normally have 32 teams. There will be 48 in the 2026 Cup. So I'd guess 8-ish games. So that's 8 Super Bowls in 6 weeks. I don't know what package of games we're going to have. We are still competing aggressively for the finals. But I'd say that's a 50-50 proposition against Dallas of all places, but that is what it is. We think, when I say we, in this case, Jersey and New York City, in the person of Eric Adams, who's been a great partner, we think we've got all the the compelling case that you need to get the finals here. But in any event, in '94 there was a semifinal in Jersey. I'd say that's the minimum that we'll get. That's going to be huge, and not just in the Meadowlands. We'll have, my guess is, Liberty State Park will be a massive fan zone. Times Square. If we get the finals, Eric Adams very smartly said, "I'm only giving you Central Park if we get the finals." So that's out there. Prospect Park, probably in Brooklyn. So there's an enormous amount that goes with that. Seeing the American dream continue to evolve is going to be a big focus, I think, for all of us. You all, and I've seen the work that you've done. I think Paul got through the legislature some planning money for the whole notion of a convention center, which conceptually looks very attractive. I spent some time yesterday going through the specs, and the thing that jumps out at me about that is New York is under capacity, ironically, given it's the biggest city in America, and it will continue to be the biggest city in America forever, no matter all the noise that we read about every day. So that's something that's out there that conceptually is very attractive. So I'd say there's a lot happening, and this is a particularly powerful geographic access here, basically Meadowlands right through into New York City, and exploiting that channel to me is probably our collective job number one.
Well, great, thank you, Governor. And we agree. We see the emergence. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we've had a lot of time to reflect on what the Meadowlands was back in 1973 and what the Meadowlands is in 2023. We had an event recently where we created this Meadow of Honor, where we honored some tremendous innovation and disruption of people that have had an impact on the region. Guys like Jerry Gottesman and Fletch Kramer Sr. and all the folks that have done some amazing things in the region. And so we've become this powerhouse of this warehouse distribution, light manufacturing, but as American Dream comes into its own, we're also generating this amazing destination-related economy, which has huge impacts for the entire state, and that's what drives us, frankly, to continue our due diligence on making sure the sports complex and the assets at the sports complex are all they can be, and that's what drives us on the whole notion of replacing the arena with a convention center that could continue to bring in huge groups of people and revenue to the state.
A couple of things. First of all, I love the notion of a destination opportunity. So that's something that we share a lot of passion with you. It must be said that the Sports and Exposition Authority is run by Paul Giuliano, in addition to his capacity as my chair, and is he and the team are doing an incredible job. And they had an incredible summer. And NJ Transit, for all the noise around that, had an incredible summer. All-time record concerts at MetLife, including Giant Stadium's tenure. Flawless execution, including, crazy crowds. 3 Taylors, 3 Bruce, 2 Ed Sheerans, 2 Beyoncés, and people got moved in and got moved out flawlessly. And I give NJ Transit and I give the SEA an enormous amount of credit. This thing has never been run better than it is now. And I'd say the same about the Chamber.
No, thank you. Agreed. And I had Ron Vanderveen from the stadium and his team out on the golf course yesterday, and we were talking about not only this tremendous season that we've had, but what's in store for the next couple of seasons, even leading up to World Cup. I, for one, on behalf of everybody in the room, and especially my team that runs our Convention and Visitors Bureau, appreciate the all-in effort from you and your administration on trying to make the World Cup and getting the final. And I agree. We will greatly benefit from 7-8 games, regardless of what that schedule will be for us. But I appreciate the efforts that you and your administration have put in to really put on that full court press with Mayor Adams on making something really happen here.
And by the way, we'll be one of the few places that sells every seat to every game. And that is not something, when you have Vietnam playing Denmark, which is a potential game in New Jersey or somewhere else, there's only one place in North America that's going to sell that game out, and it's Jersey.
Absolutely. Let's switch over to, you had this amazing East Asia trip just recently.
Yes.
And
I had Jose withdrawal symptoms, though he was first trip I've taken as governor that he wasn't involved with.
Well, first of all, I think the efforts, which certainly started back when Jose was CEO at Choose New Jersey, and really the focus of advancing, showcasing New Jersey to an international market and to others, and combined in what Choose is doing along with EDA. Share with us a little bit about the East Asia trip, and tell us what some of the highlights were there.
Yeah, I'll be brief, but it was an action-packed trip. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan. We didn't announce Taiwan until we were wheels up from Seoul into Taipei at the request of the U.S. Department of Defense, which got our attention. We met with the heads of state in each country and the foreign ministers in each country. So in Japan, it's the prime minister, and in Seoul, Korea, it's the president, and in Taiwan, it was actually dinner hosted by the president in her home for about 8 or 10 of us. So pretty heady stuff. Foreign minister across the board, minister of what they call MEDI in Japan, Ministry of Economics, Trade, and Investment. A bunch of mayors, Seoul, Tokyo, Taipei, and a whole lot of both higher ed and business meetings. The higher ed stuff was largely somewhere between memoranda of understanding to letter of intent, in some cases actual joint ventures, typically sharing research or exchanges of faculty and students. We are by many measures the most international state in America. I can give you that any which way you'd like it, but a couple of them would be, there's no state in America that has the international connections via air that we do in the tri-state area. No one comes close. And we literally calculate, Jose knows this, we calculate. We've been now to Germany, Israel, India, Ireland, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, a little French mini version, so 7 or 8 missions, and every time out we're calculating daily nonstop flights, and nobody comes close. We calculate things like percentage of our kids that take a foreign language. We are number one, and you can't even find us on the page. We look at our diversity. We look at the flags that international businesses have planted already in New Jersey. How welcoming we are of international professionals and their families. Values matter a whole lot on these trips. So folks from afar see a lot of the debates that you were referring to earlier, and they want to know where you are on how welcoming are you. And we score very highly on all of the above. In fact, we got to leaving, there's a scorecard, which I think we'll probably now update on a regular basis, that ranks New Jersey on about 15 areas, independent, objective assessments by legitimate organizations, not organizations owned by either Sullivan or me, but independent entities, and ranking New Jersey, and then comparing New Jersey to about 18 or 20 other states that we typically compete against. And we do really well. We do really, really well. And the one thing that's not on that chart, because it's hard to rank states 1 through 50 objectively, is the arsenal of incentives that we have at our disposal under Tim's leadership, which clearly is an independent entity with a process and an independent board of directors, but it is for the good of the state of New Jersey. And as we sit here this morning, Tim is sitting on $14.3 billion of incentives. And with all due respect to things like affordability and tax rates and all that, there's no state in America that's sitting on that war chest right now. So And we use that. So when you combine the values in the international dimensions, et cetera, with a war chest, with ratings that are really good on things that matter for folks, we show very, very well overseas. And then lastly, we do cool things, and this matters particularly in Bergen County. We have been begged by the Korean community since as far back as I can remember to legalize reciprocity of driver's licenses between South Korea and Jersey, and we got that done. You can now do that. You can use your Korean driver's license in Jersey and your Jersey driver's license in South Korea. We mentioned this to the Japanese. They said, oh, wait a minute. We got to see if we can do this for us as well. So I'm not making any news, but we're pursuing that. We don't have as big a Japanese community as Korean community, but we're going to look at that as well. So I'd say all in all, extremely successful. And I mentioned this earlier. There's going to be some here and now hits. There'll be hits over the next couple of years coming out of this. There may be hits that don't hit us for 5 or 10 years coming out of relationships that you begin. And that's okay. As long as it's good, for the good of New Jersey, count us in.
Governor, before we take a few questions from the audience, I want to acknowledge my dear friend Tony Papamarcos, who's the great owner of this facility and is as generous as the day is long. And Tony, thank you so much for everything that you do.
Nice to be back here. I think I'm coming for Senator Stack next week, Thursday. I just want to make sure. I'll see you then.
So tell us a little bit about governor life, right? So you're 6 years, you're halfway through his second term, and if you had to go back and say, this is what I wanted to accomplish, something that might be a legacy item that you really felt personally committed to, that you were able to achieve, and maybe something that you still really feel strongly about that you want to get to before your term ends.
I don't spend a lot of time on legacy, but I do think this gets back to where we started, and I'll be brief because I know the clock is not our friend. I'd like to think that folks would say, you know what, these guys both were who they said they would be. They were true to what they said. There were not a whole lot, if any, surprises. And secondly, they turned the place around. This state was listing. Let's all face it. By the way, guilty as charged, both sides of the aisle. It was not growing. It was a zero-sum sort of reality in terms of the economy. It was profoundly unfair and not equal. And we no longer were a AAA bond-rated state or a state that folks said, good practices, let's look to New Jersey. And again, we're not perfect. I'm not going to tear my rotator cuff patting ourselves on the back, but we've made a lot of progress on all three of those. What's still left to be done, whether you folks like it or not, liquor license reform. That's not the only thing, but that's one of the big ones that we still want to get done. And then I'd say more execution of the same. Our first term was putting a lot of stuff up there that we needed to put up there. I think Tom and I had this conversation a while back. Second term has largely been executing. Some new stuff, clearly, but it is largely putting stuff in place, term one, executing on that term two, and that's will continue to be the case.
Awesome. I know that Senator Sarlo has been a champion of the extension of outdoor dining. We're hoping we can get that to be permanent and so forth.
One other shout out for Paul Sarlo is, with all due regard to the good ideas that Sullivan or Jose back in the day or I may have, if you don't get, overwhelmingly, if you don't get legislation on your desk that's led by guys like Paul, who, by the way, is the chair of the Budget Committee, which is arguably the most important committee we have in either chamber, you don't get it done. So, Paul, hats off to you.
Yep. All right, we got a few minutes left, and I want to extend the first question to a student. Which student in the room has a question for the governor? Come on. You had to know I was going to pick you. All right, go ahead. There's a microphone coming to you right now.
It's working? There we go. My name is Ben Sam. I'm with Ramapo College. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I have a sustainability company, so I'm wondering what you're doing besides just the NJ Zip program that encompasses the entire sustainability field.
So sustainability means lots of things to lots of people. If you look at sort of the clean energy value chain, we've got big activity across the board. So huge activity in solar, largely led by BPU. We're going to get into that game a little bit in the next year with some federal funding. Hydrogen, big new opportunity. President, while we were on the tarmac at Newark heading to Tokyo, President Biden was giving Governor Murphy a shout out because we're part of a big regional hub that got a big dose of federal money around hydrogen. Big opportunity there. That's probably kind of the next frontier until that manifests as jobs, but certainly a big ambition there. Building decarbonization, Governor signed into legislation a program called CPACE, which stands for Commercial Property Assessment for Clean Energy. It's basically a way to long-term finance building decarbonization voluntarily. For anyone scoring at home, voluntary building decarbonization, if you wish to, which you'll save money and you'll help the environment, you should do it, is essentially it's a pretty tax-advantaged way to finance clean energy, building retrofits, energy retrofits, and some new construction. Battery storage and transmission we see as huge opportunities as well. Those are sort of the two known unknowns around the sort of the clean energy transition of how we're going to accomplish it. And then offshore wind is a big one, which is going to generate, sometime between now and the future, enough renewable clean energy to support every home in New Jersey by the time it's all said and done, which is it's been a bumpy road, but that's the future there remains pretty bright. So soup to nuts, no matter how you think about the sort of sustainable development and the clean energy transition, we've got big ambitions led by the governor who's set, some of the most aggressive, in a good way, ambitious targets around clean energy and clean energy adoption in America.
Awesome.
Thank you, Tim. By the way, I would just say offshore wind has been probably the singular industry most impacted by supply chain, interest rates, and inflation, just because of the nature of the beast. But we will not relent. Sorry. Yes and no. Because it's a lawsuit, I won't get into the specifics of the legal contours, but as a general matter, we're not relenting. I'm frankly offended by it, which is maybe not a word I've used before. And it's not that we've got a conceptual issue with reducing pollution, making the world a better, cleaner place. Our environmental record stands up over the past 6 years against any place else probably on the planet, never mind in the United States. But a plan which is explicitly to bail the MTA out financially on the back of Jersey commuters and displace the environmental impact of congestion in Manhattan largely to Hudson and Bergen County is unacceptable. And that latter part is because the George Washington Bridge will be treated with their current proposal differently than the Lincoln and Holland tunnels. So you didn't ask this, but if I may, we're not suing at least yet the MTA because our lawyers have advised us they haven't actually put out a concrete plan. They've put proposals out, but not an actual plan that they've married themselves to. In the absence of that, we've been told pretty clearly that our legal case would be weak. We have sued, not happily, the federal government because the one thing they could have done and chose not to do, and we're mystified as to why they didn't, is they could have asked for an environmental impact study, which would have taken longer, admittedly, 2 or 3 years probably, but everyone would have been at the table, including Jersey, and I've said, to the extent I'm able to say this, we would live with the results. But they chose not to do that. We're in a dogfight. I don't know where this is going to come out. The MTA makes a lot of noise. They put out some proposals that made some progress in terms of addressing the real bones in our throat. But we're still in the fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the time that we need. Can we do one more?
100%.
Right here. Yeah.
That's okay.
Sheila,
Fire
Sheila.
away.
Yes.
Yep. I would easy on that part.
Business-wise, I want to ask you questions about art. So, art is a new language in this modern society, and we're not even talking about arts. But what is art for you, and what is going to be art in the future? Because it is a new language, and it is reflecting all of the big news and big businesses, for example, those logos and everything. Well, what is art for you, and what is the future of art?
Art is in A-R-T? Art.
Yeah.
I've got a good answer for you. First of all, I'm a recovering actor. I was an actor in middle school, high school, and college. Considered doing it for a living. I did not. I thank my lucky stars every day. More relevantly to New Jersey, by the way, tonight I will be at NJ PAC introducing Stephen Colbert and Marty Scorsese at an event for Montclair Film, which is one of the big art organizations in the state. I don't think any state in America put more money into art during the pandemic than New Jersey. And I'm as guilty as anyone in not talking about that, because we talk so much about STEM and we talk too little about STEAM. But we have a very vibrant arts council. In fact, Stephen Colbert's wife, Evie, is one of the chairs. The North to Shore Festival. I don't normally take personal credit for stuff. That was me waking up one day looking at South by Southwest, which is hugely successful in Texas. And Texas is a state that's not good on values right now. If you're a woman, or if you care about gun safety, or migrants, or the environment, or a whole bunch of things, I'm thinking, wait a minute, how can they get away with that essentially? And we're a high value state, which is with as much talent as any state in America. Hey, why can't we do that? We did the North to Shore Festival, which I think you funded, in Atlantic City, not personally, Atlantic City, Asbury Park, and Newark. We do a lot, and we believe, I think I heard the words that you said, we believe in the language of art. We believe in the connectivity. We believe, particularly right now where so many innocent people are getting slaughtered around the world, where there's a war in Europe that none of us ever thought we'd see again in our lifetime, when you've got huge migrant crises, when you've got inflation and interest rates that are high. One of the things I'm going to say tonight is one of the reasons we gather and go to the movies to see Killers of the Flower Moon in Scorsese's case, or watch Stephen on television, is it allows us to sort of get away from it all and sort of take in life in a more constructive, harmonious way. Thank you. I got to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, your governor, Phil Murphy.